story of the Black Sisters from Christiansburg, Virginia. I've been wanting to cover the Black Sisters since I started Spooky Appalachia, but I've been waiting for the right time. With a movie coming out soon, I thought now might be a good time. I grew up in Christiansburg, Virginia, and I've heard many stories about the Black Sisters. Today, I will share with you some of the local legends and stories I have heard. From what I can find, the three sisters were called the Black Sisters because they wore all black clothing. From the stories I heard, they wore black dresses, shoes, gloves, hats, and veils, as though they were going to a funeral or mourning. Their names were Mary Sneed, Carolyn Martin, and Virginia Wardlaw. Mary and Carolyn came to Christiansburg around 1902 to help their sister Virginia run the Montgomery County Female Academy. Around this time, a few mysterious events began to happen. First, there was the disappearance of a controversial illegitimate baby birthed by one of the students at the school. Shortly after, Mary's son John was found burned to death in bed just a week after his mother and aunts had taken out a very large insurance policy on him. Sometime later, Carolyn's daughter Osie came to town and married her first cousin, Mary's son, Fletcher Sneed. Sometime after, Osie became pregnant and Fletcher left town, so it was up to the Black Sisters to take care of her. It turns out they didn't take very good care of Osie and the baby at all. Shortly after the baby was born, it died due to malnutrition. After that, Osie was found drowned in the bathtub just days after a large insurance policy was taken out on her as well. After all of these events occurred, the sisters left town to New Jersey. Soon after their arrival, the authorities caught up with them. Carolyn was convicted of murder and sentenced to 7 years in a mental hospital, where she later died. Mary pleaded guilty, but got off on a technicality, and after that she fled to Colorado. Finally, Virginia starved herself to death before she ever saw a judge. So where does the paranormal aspect of this story come in? From what I've heard, there are two locations that one or more of the Black Sisters are said to haunt. The first one is the old Christiansburg Middle School building. The former middle school, which is now the Montgomery County Public Schools Technology Center, was built on top of where the Montgomery County Female Academy stood. There have been reports of lights going on and out randomly. Whispers, footsteps in the hallway when no one is around, and dark, shadowy figures in some of the rooms and hallways. The other location that I've heard the sisters haunt is Sunset Cemetery, where Virginia Wardlaw is said to be buried. Supposedly, a taxi driver claimed to have driven them to the cemetery, where they conducted some type of ritual at a grave site. Was this ritual something that would allow them to later return as spirits to the cemetery? I've heard several people who have claimed to see the spirits at the cemetery. For the most part, people report seeing shadow figures darting around the cemetery at night, but I've heard stories growing up that Virginia can be seen dancing around the cemetery at midnight. This pretty much sums up what I've heard over the years. I hadn't written a story on this topic yet because I've been so afraid that I would mess it up. Hopefully I did the story justice, and my hometown doesn't hate me for it. If you've ever had an experience you think is related to the Black Sisters, or any kind of paranormal experience that you'd like to see featured on Spooky Appalachia, you can email us at webmaster@spookyappalachia.com.
Alright everybody, this is Jimmy from Spooky Appalachia. Today we are on location where the Black Sisters had the all-girls school. This is the steps going up. And if you want to find out more about the Black Sisters, check our the website or the video on the Black Sisters. This is the old Christiansburg High School that became the middle school. The all-girls school used to be here at this location. I believe the county bought it, the land, and tore down the former college. Just look around real quick at the grounds while we're going up. There's a flagpole. It's raining like crazy. I don't know if we're still, that hurricane still nearby or what. Has it gone by us?
I think so.
Okay.
I think we're just
maybe on the
Raymond
tail
said
end
it.
of it or something, I don't know. So the first thing I see is different from the last time I was here. The windows had all been replaced. They're using this as like a technology center or something now from Montgomery County Public Schools. These are, look,
all new windows on
Yeah.
the side.
the last time I was here was several years ago, and I believe some of the windows had like cracks and holes where people had thrown rocks through. One thing, I'm pointing at the windows a lot, is one thing I heard was that you'll see these curtains get closed quickly or something dart by the windows. This is like after hours where people wouldn't be here working. Weekends, I've seen videos, people here at night. What did this building used to be? Is this like the wood shop place and the cafeteria and stuff?
The extra classrooms,
Okay.
cafeteria down below, band, and shop.
Let's go film this building over here real quick. I don't know what was here. Do you?
There used to be like a cover on this sidewalk. But
This was all added on later, I believe. And then that main building over there was the high school.
I think this is the band
Okay.
and shop class, some other things. What do you call it? Extracurricular.
Just in there. I remember walking through these halls. I'd be by myself going to the bathroom or something, and you just kind of would feel like somebody's watching you even though you're by yourself.
Especially up in the main building up there.
It was just creepy. And then everybody, we'll shoot this and then, all right, let's go this way. Everybody, like everybody I knew that went here said they I don't know if this was just middle schoolers talking or what, but everybody had some kind of story of something that they saw or some experience. I heard a lot about people seeing shadows in the hallways, and then people hearing whispers in the bathrooms. Oh, let's get a shot over here real quick. They're doing some construction over here. I don't know what's going on. This used to be like a track and a football field, I believe. This was a long time ago.
It's been over 20 years since I've been here.
Oh gosh, where does the time go? Not sure what this is. Some kind of loading dock or something. Warehouse and deliveries. Okay.
Just storage,
Storage. Okay.
utilities.
Some kind of.
This has been updated. You can see newer windows, the bay doors. New.
Ah, yeah. Okay.
That's the old gymnasium.
There was something that went on in the gymnasium piece people used to talk about. I don't know. And then something about like a well, like, you know, the style of well you would see in like the Ring. This was way back before the Ring, so.
I think this spot up here is where the groundskeeper
Oh,
would have lived. And would have been set on fire, supposedly.
Yeah.
There was an accident.
The well, I think I heard the well was underneath the gymnasium now.
Yeah, that's what the
That's-
rumor was.
That's what it was. Okay.
That's why this was like the kind of a big hot spot. be
Yeah.
an unusual spot.
And there was like, I think the rumor was that there had been at least one person thrown down that well. At least one. You go, you hear all these, you hear all kinds of rumors. It's hard to tell what was true.
These are the old windows I remember.
Ah,
And
yeah.
You can see the staircases. I guess there's something going down over there to the basement.
Oh, you're right. It's caged up.
Yeah, you can't get out obviously, but there's another level to this.
And then there's the windows have something over them.
Yeah.
That's like paper or something. There's an ancient old keyboard there. Looking down there, there's the basement. We can't go in, obviously.
There's some kind of weird door down here. I don't know what that's for.
Huh.
I have no idea. But it's always been closed off, even when I was here.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's still creepy to this day. My grandma worked here. I didn't actually go here, but I stayed with her in the summer because my parents worked. And I would come here. She would come maybe once or twice a week, and I'd wander the halls. And
Is that light on?
it is.
Is that light on the first time we walked through?
I don't know, actually. I don't remember that.
I don't remember that either.
I do not remember that light being on. That's
It's
bizarre.
noticeable now, and I do not remember.
I
it being
definitely don't remember that light. It was pitch black earlier. Huh. Well, that's weird. Maybe we caught something.
I'm serious, I don't remember that light being on. That's-
But what was I saying? Oh yeah, I came here about once a week with my grandma in the summers, and you know, you walk the hall and you feel like. Did you just see something move? Huh. So yeah, I would walk the halls and I would feel like, just felt like somebody was watching me or I wasn't alone. It was really eerie. I think you said you had similar experiences going here.
That happened, especially in this building, going to the bathroom one time, all alone, come downstairs, and it's just, it's like it was dark, but it wasn't dark. It was just weird. That feeling
Yeah.
of standing in the dark all alone, even though everything's light.
Let's walk back around the front. This way. There's the Christiansburg Library. Watch out for these puddles.
There's the broken glass.
Ah!
All that old glass.
There's one with a hole in it. Wow. This is an old building. I didn't realize it was that old. You know, it was built in the 30s.
35?
34 or 35. And this was the old Christiansburg High School.
I don't know when the other part was added on.
Yeah, they added those parts on. I don't know when that happened. I don't know when it became the middle school either. Do you?
I can't remember when the new high school was built.
The new high school? Yeah, that new high school is actually pretty old.
Maybe 60s,
Oh, okay.
70s?
And then they moved the high school out there, the high school students. I guess the schools got too big.
How's that panel open?
Where? Oh, that's weird. An open electrical panel there.
The lights are on in the hallway too.
Well, they probably keep the lights on to.
Well, there's a couple lights rather.
I put it up to the window so you can see in a little bit. Gosh. Ugh. Go back up around the front. There's another shot of the front lawn. It's really raining. Let's look in here. I've seen several videos where the curtains have closed or something's ran by. It'd be awesome if we caught something like that. That light in the back though, that was bizarre. I do not remember that being on. Flagpole. I'll just get one last shot of the front here. There's little grooves right there in the building. I remember people used to climb on them. There's the entrance. The old entrance. Alright, well, hopefully that concludes our little video here. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Phantom Whistler, Roanoke, Virginia, September 2022. The following story was brought to our attention by our good friend Julie. We were then given permission from a local artist, Stephanie, to use this amazing and creepy story. If you have a minute, I hope you will read this very bizarre experience I've had over the past couple of weeks. A lot of y'all are on my personal page, and if you're not, please send me a friend request. I will happily accept. Anyway, several nights ago, I got up like I often do at 3 a.m., but this time it wasn't because I could not sleep. I think I actually could have slept until a bit later that morning. I woke up because I heard whistling. Now, whistling does not creep me out, but whistling at 3 a.m. does. And it wasn't birds or anything of the like. This was a melodious whistle, as though someone was simply whistling a tune. I went ahead and made my coffee and decided to stay up, thinking it was likely a neighbor doing their laundry or whatever. What freaked me out is when I got into the studio, the whistling began again, and sounded like it was in the basement just below us. It's very quiet here in the middle of the night, so I was sure someone was in my basement whistling. I shrugged it off and went on about my day, mentioning it to James, my daughter, my son, and even my mom. We joked about it being ghostly activity or me finally losing my mind. The next morning I wake up and come into the studio after I've made my coffee, and I hear the whistling again. Now this is odd, so I said a little prayer and just kind of sat here trying to ignore what I was hearing. Talked to my daughter about it again, and she said it was likely someone's video game or perhaps just someone walking around outside doing whatever they're doing at 3 a.m. I have to admit I was a bit freaked out. A friend had commented that they too had heard whistling through the night, but they live in a different part of Roanoke, but it got me kind of curious. Are other people hearing this? So I asked a few neighbors, and James mentioned it, and no one else had shared my experience. So I did what any person in 2022 would do. I went to Google. First I Googled whistling in Roanoke, to which I only found a few reports from a couple of weeks ago. People recorded hearing strange whistling around the railroad tracks. We don't live that close to the railroad, so I dismissed that. I kept searching. I decided to get very specific, and I entered whistling, Grandin Road, Roanoke, Virginia. Jackpot. Chills went up my spine when I opened an article about John Nash, who lived at my address in the 60s. If the name John Nash is familiar, it's because he's a Nobel Prize winner for the game Theory in Mathematics. He was the subject of the movie starring Russell Crowe, A Beautiful Mind. Apparently, while he lived here at my address, he took to whistling while he walked back and forth to the library and around Grandin and Raleigh Court. Mothers feared their children and protected them from him as he just looked disheveled and scary. During this time, he was suffering with audio hallucinations due to schizophrenia and had been in and out of mental institutions. The article stated that he was dubbed the Whistler of Grandin Road. You gotta be kidding me. Granted, I doubt this is connected to my mid-morning whistler. However, I hardly believe in coincidences, and I think it's pretty incredible. Additionally, while he lived here, he set a fire that some claimed was intentional, and when James and I were downstairs in the basement a few months ago, we noticed the flame-kissed beams just under our apartment. Apparently, his mother had lived in our apartment in the mid to late 60s. They are numbered the same now as they were then, and he resided with her before her death in 1969. Ultimately, he would leave Roanoke, and he also overcame his schizophrenia, which is almost unheard of by the power of the mind. It's one of the most bizarre things that's ever happened to me, and it left me quite speechless and a bit freaked out at first. He would ultimately die in a car accident in New Jersey around 2014 or 2015. I'm going to link the article in the comments below. I just thought it was something really cool that happened, and I wanted to share it with you guys. Tell me your weird or odd stories. Odd things happen to me a lot, but this might be the oddest. Typically, it's cool coincidences and connections that I make with you guys. Things we have in common that connect us, but never did I expect that the Nobel Prize winner John Nash lived here in our apartment and was called the Whistler of Grandin Road. Shocking, but inspiring. I watched a documentary about him this morning because I'm so intrigued and will likely read articles about him in days to come. If you read this, thank you. Also, if you got all the way through to the end and are still reading, I'm going to be giving away 5 paintings up until my birthday on September 30th, celebrating 50 years of life. Super excited and not at all saddened by the fact that I'm turning 50. I feel like I've beaten the odds, and I'm very grateful that this is my life. Perhaps I should start whistling my own tune. Thank you for taking the time out of your morning or day to read my story. Can't wait to hear some of y'all's. Shine on. Thank you, Stephanie, for allowing us to share your story. If you end up having more encounters, let us know. Remember, if you've had a paranormal encounter like this and want to send it in, you can email us at webmaster@spookyappalachia.com. Black-eyed kid encounter at a Taco Bell. This story was emailed in by a fan named TJ. He said he really enjoyed the story I posted last week and that he had one he wanted to share. June 2016, Aberdeen, Ohio. I was working the night shift at my local Taco Bell when I had one of the scariest moments in my life that I have ever experienced. It was 10 o'clock at night. The place was a graveyard. I was working the drive-thru that night. We hadn't had a customer in hours, so I was catching up on some cleaning. Suddenly, there was a loud static sound coming over my drive-thru headphones, so loud I had to take them off. I checked the camera, and nothing there, so I went about my business. Then I start getting the feeling like someone is watching me. Shortly after, my coworker comes from the back and lets out a shriek. I turn to see a girl with jet black hair standing at the drive-thru window facing us. My coworker and I look at each other in disbelief. We then hear the girl speak in a voice that still chills me to this very day. "May I come in?" My coworker and I stood there for a moment, not knowing what to say. I then responded, "Sorry, miss, the restaurant is closed for the night. We are only taking orders to the drive-thru." The girl then replies, "Please, let me come in. I really need to use the bathroom." My coworker then looks at me and whispers, "Dude, maybe we should just let her in. She's just a kid." I shake my head no. Something just feels off about this whole thing. I mean, what is a 10 or 11-year-old girl doing standing in a drive-thru at 10 p.m. on a Wednesday night? I responded to the girl, "I'm sorry, we can't let anyone in. We've closed the restaurant for the night." After a moment of silence, the girl starts banging on the window and shouting, "Let me in! Let me in!" I look at my coworker and ask, "What should we do?" He responded, I don't know, call the police?" The girl then stops and stares at us, and that's when we see it, a set of pitch black eyes. After a few moments of silence, we hear a voice that sounds like it's coming from 1,000 miles away. "Hello?" We look in the direction it's coming from, the drive-thru headset. We walk over to it, turning our backs on the girl. I respond, "Hello?" The man on the other end responds, "Yes, can I have 2 5-layer burritos?" My coworker then shouts, "Oh my God, she's gone." I turn to look at the girl, who is nowhere to be seen. After serving the guy at the drive-thru, my coworker and I began searching the internet on my phone, only to find out we had just had an encounter with a black-eyed kid. I worked at that Taco Bell for another 2 years before moving from Ohio. We never saw the girl again. Thank you for the story, TJ. I really enjoyed this one. It was really creepy, and it sounds like the black-eyed kids show up at restaurants as well. I hope everyone enjoyed this story and that folks continue to send these in. Do you have a paranormal story? Let us know and we would love to feature it. Email us at webmaster@spookyappalachia.com. And thank you for listening. Phantom Group Member at St. Albans Sanatorium, Halloween 2014. Happy Halloween! As a special treat for the spookiest of holidays, we have a story from Julie, a volunteer at St. Albans Sanatorium and friend of Spooky Appalachia, who was kind enough to do a live stream with us a while back. You can hear this story, which she told us when we first met her while touring St. Albans, as well as many others on our live stream from August 27th.
Okay, I'll tell you the one that you told me before that you liked the most.
Yeah.
This is my first, when I was first up there, and like I said, I was working a haunted house. And my set, I was upstairs in the second floor hallway. And people would come down the hallway, and I'd pop out of a room. There was a little patient room there, and had a big hole in the door, and it was like perfect for me, like, you know, stick my head. If you can imagine, I'm like done up like some kind of something straight out of hell. And I'd stick my head through that door, you know, and then, you know, and then really scare them, because then I'd pull my head out and fling the door open, chase them down the hall, and lead them off to where they need to. Then my partner's at the end, he'd lead them off where they need to go down the stairs. Right. So that's your little step. So one of my daughters, she was supposed to come to the haunted house, and she had just started dating somebody new. I'd never met him, and she was telling me that, you know, he had been kind of talking smack, you know, he's one of those, that stuff don't scare him, you know. So she's like, Mama, you got to scare him. So I'm like, I'll do my best. So they come, it's Halloween night, and they come about 30 minutes before closing. Now that weekend it was rainy and cold and damp, so everybody's coming in, everybody's got hats on, it's dark, and so I'm standing there and I hear a group coming, and I'm waiting, and I hear my daughter giggling. So I was like, oh, here they come. So I'm in this room, and I'm looking out this hole, and I see two young men go by, and I see my daughter, Heather, and then another girl behind her. So I stick my head out the hole, and I do, you know, I do my thing, and I come running out. I go around my daughter and her friend, this other young lady, because my focus is on the two guys. I don't know which one's her boyfriend, but one of them is, and I'm going to scare one of the other. Which I did, I will say. Sorry, I'm going to put him out there. He did kind of screech like a little girl, run back. So I run out, and I run around the girls, and I did my thing, and they go down the hall and around the side, and I went down to my partner down at the end, because now everybody, they go out in the hall, down the stairwell to go downstairs to the next level. And I says to this guy I'm working with, I said, see that girl there? That's my daughter. I says, not the one in the very back, the next one, the one that's laughing like a fool, right? I said, that's my daughter. So I turn around and go back down the hallway. My girl comes back around me, and she hugs me, and she's laughing. She's like, you got him, Mama. Well, that girl was still behind her. So I wait. I'm like, hi, I'm Heather's mom. And they leave. But the girl, let me tell you, this girl, she looked like she was bored to death. If you can imagine the average middle school girl, hoodie on, pouty. She didn't look like she was having a good time, but whatever. So when I got to talk to my daughter about them coming, it was like Sunday. And so I was like, did y'all like it? Did you have a good time? And I said, this girl, I said, she looked like she was having fun. Did she have any fun at all? She looked bored. And I was like, what girl? I said, I guess it was the other guy's girlfriend. I don't know. And she's like, Mom, there wasn't nobody else with us. And I'm like, don't you be lying to me. Don't lie to me, because I'm in that building, you know. And she's like, no. Well, it was just the three of them. But I know darn good and well there was. But the thing is, it stayed with my daughter. Wherever she walked, this girl was behind her. But she never saw her, but she's just as real as anybody else. But when I was talking about it, she said, well, no, the only people I saw, besides me and the two guys, she says, was you, Mom. She says, the guy and the other lady at the end of the hall he was working with. And I'm like, what lady at the end of the hall?
Oh.
She saw a lady in a nurse's uniform, which had nothing to do with what our hunt. So we both saw somebody that looked legit real. but we're the only people that saw him.
Yeah.
And that's the one that gets me, because that's the one that makes me question any group that comes through. When I work in a haunted house, okay, I see 5 people. Is it really 5 people? Or is it like 2 or 3 and a couple lagging along? You never
Yeah. You never know.
but and she was just as real as anybody.
Thank you, Julie, for this story. It's always wonderful to hear you tell it, and we're excited to feature more of your stories here in the future. If you live close to Radford, Virginia, be sure to check out the haunted house at St. Albans every fall. You can find information on that and other exciting events at www.stalbansvirginia.com. Remember, if you have a story you would like to see get published here, you can email us at webmaster@spookyappalachia.com. St. Albans Sanatorium, Radford, Virginia. St. Albans Sanatorium has been many things over the years: a boys' school, a mental hospital, an ill-considered daycare facility, and today, a site for those seeking an experience with the paranormal. Built on a hill overlooking the New River outside of Radford, Virginia, at the site of a bloody battle from the American Civil War, the location's violent history has led to many locals viewing it as a nexus for paranormal activity. The structure now known as St. Albans Sanatorium began life as St. Albans Lutheran Boys' School in 1892. The school operated first under headmaster George W. Miles and then Winslow H. Randolph. It was a prestigious preparatory school in the area. However, bullying was reportedly rampant, and there were rumors that several students lost their lives. St. Albans closed in 1904, but the building sat vacant until 1916, when Dr. J.C. King converted the property into St. Albans Sanatorium. Dr. King was a forward-thinking psychologist for the time, emphasizing a home-like environment and attempting to treat his patients rather than simply locking them up away from society. St. Albans featured such amenities as a rooftop garden, a bowling alley, and a farm where the patients could work. Unfortunately, the treatments were still, by today's standards, barbaric. Electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and insulin shock therapies routinely left patients either brain dead or just simply dead. Hydrotherapy was also employed, where patients were covered in towels soaked in cold water or left in bathtubs for days on end. Given the violent nature of the treatments at the hospital, it is unsurprising that the location is home to numerous unquiet dead. Jacob is one spirit said to haunt St. Albans. While it's unlikely he was a patient at St. Albans, it was not uncommon at the time for families to leave children they could not afford at such institutions, as they provided a relatively safe place for the child. This was unfortunately not the case for Jacob, who was found beaten to death in his bed. If you visit St. Albans today, there's a memorial room for Jacob where you can leave toys for him. Who knows? The playful spirit might even decide to play with you. Donald is another spirit roaming the halls of the old sanatorium. He was accused of Jacob's murder, but it is rumored he was gay, and it is therefore unfortunately likely that he was an innocent scapegoat, easily framed given the discriminatory attitudes prevalent at the time. Donald's spirit is mischievous, and visitors will frequently report being touched by an apparition while visiting his rooms. Rebecca is one of the more famous ghosts at St. Albans. Shortly after arriving at St. Albans, she gave birth to a baby who was either stillborn or died soon after. Fearing the staff would take the deceased child from her, Rebecca hid it in the closet in her room. After the staff finally discovered the baby, Rebecca committed suicide, and her gentle spirit is still said to reside in St. Albans today. Unfortunately, Rebecca was not the only person to commit suicide at St. Albans during its time as a mental hospital. The so-called suicide bathroom in the attic of St. Albans was the location of at least 3 confirmed suicides. Moving down to the lower levels of St. Albans, the boiler room and the bowling alley are particular paranormal hotspots. Smokey is a spirit who resides in the boiler room, and whom people leave cigarettes for. The lower levels are also said to be home to the spirit of a young woman who was likely murdered near St. Albans in 1980. Her blood-stained car was found only a short distance away, and it is suspected by some that her body was incinerated in the basement of the old sanatorium. It has been reported that an eerie mist will appear in the bowling alley at the mention of her name. The bowling alley in the basement houses a particularly malevolent spirit, the demon Red Eyes. When the team here at Spooky Appalachia visited St. Albans, we attempted to draw Red Eyes out by bullying him for his given moniker. We pointed out that, compared to the names of other demons, Lucifer, Beelzebub, Belphegor, Asmodeus, Red Eyes tends towards the pedestrian. Unfortunately, for our quest to experience the paranormal, the demon did not take our bait. That is not to say that our visit to St. Albans was uneventful. When walking through a long dark hallway in the basement, our flashlight suddenly went out. Assuming we simply forgot to change the batteries, we pressed on, hopeful to get to a place with more natural lighting. Upon leaving the hallway, our flashlight began working again. A big thank you to Julie from St. Albans, who was our tour guide on our visit, and was kind enough to sit down with us for a live stream, and who provided many of the stories we've related today. If you are looking for a book on St. Albans Sanatorium, we highly recommend The Ghosts of St. Albans Sanatoriums by Pat Bussard O'Keefe. If you live close to Radford, Virginia, be sure to check out St. Albans' annual haunted house, which takes place in September and October every year, or one of their historical tours or ghost tours throughout the year. Maybe you will have some more luck meeting Red Eyes than we did. Trumpet sounds coming from the sky. Skyquakes, or trumpets, are a strange new phenomenon being reported all over the world. Reports state that a trumpet sounds, or there is a sonic boom coming from the sky. In some cases, a shock causes buildings to shake. The odd thing about this one is the amount of evidence there is out there. Go on social media and search trumpet sounds coming from the sky, and you'll find several pages full of records and news reports about the phenomenon. It was even included in the X-Files revival. The question is, what is it? Some who've experienced the phenomenon fear that it is a warning sign from heaven itself. In the Bible's book of Matthew, there is a mention of trumpet sounds signaling a great disaster, or the end of times. Let's hope this isn't the case. Here's the passage. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. Then will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will mourn when they see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven, with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. Matthew 24:29-31. I myself have experienced this phenomenon. In May 2019, I was in my yard playing with my dog when I started hearing a terrible sound coming from the sky. The sound even startled my dog. Me being me, the first thing I did was pull out my phone and record it. You can view that on our site. The sound lasted for about half an hour before it stopped, and I have not heard it since. My friends in the area were all puzzled on what it could be. Possible Mothman sighting, Cairo, West Virginia, July 17th. For today's story, we have a possible Mothman encounter story sent in by Natasha. This one is particularly interesting because it's a very recent Mothman sighting in West Virginia, and her friend got a photo. I hope you all enjoy it as much as we did. I've seen a few posts now for people looking for something fun and scary to do, so what better time than to tell you about our trip to Cairo, West Virginia the other night. First, we stopped off at the school to take a quick tour inside, but we were chased out by bats, so we went down another road, which ultimately got us lost and scared that our vehicle would roll over the hill. We didn't stop there. We continued out to Silver Run Tunnel 19, but instead of walking, we decided to drive through. Upon coming to the opposite end, we looked over to a picnic table, and all we saw were two bright red lights on top of this table. The odd part was that the lights would appear and disappear. So two brave souls got out to look, and one of them actually picked up two tea-light candles. Yet the candles were cold and were never lit, so he kicked the candles into the woods, and we backed the hell up and went to speed out of there. Then we decided to stop in the middle of the tunnel and turn the lights out while letting my son-in-law and another fellow out. We locked the doors to go to speed off to mess with them, but then my son-in-law comes hauling ass back to the vehicle and starts begging to be let back in. Once again, these two red lights followed him into the tunnel. Mind you, there were 6 of us total, and we all watched these lights blink like they were eyes. So I stepped on the gas and we got the hell out of there. The even crazier part of all of this was when we got to the bridge to come across back into the little town, we came to a stop and suddenly you could hear the loudest scratching noise come across the outside of the vehicle. Of course, we all say what the heck was that, and we sit there for a minute. My son-in-law got out and looked under, over, and all around the vehicle, and not a branch, twig, nothing in that road. We booked our butts out of that town fast as crap, and I hold my hand to God this shit really all happened. This was my second most creepiest encounter at Silver Run in Cairo, and I can say I'm definitely done with the place. I've also sent along some photos my friend managed to take of it. Pretty incredible story, and with a photo. Not many people have gotten them. We feel extremely lucky to have been given permission to use this. Thank you, Natasha. Possible Mothman sighting from southern Michigan in 2019. This week we have a story from Lori with a possible Mothman sighting from southern Michigan back in 2019. It's a pretty exciting story, and I'm happy to be able to share it here. Also, check out our original story on the Mothman for more information on the creature. I've shared this story before. I am reluctant to share it again. I am sure it will sound like I'm batshit crazy, but the truth is this happened without a doubt. I live in southern Michigan, USA. A couple of years ago, back in 2019, I was on my way home from a friend's house. It was about 11 p.m. I was alone in my F-150 truck. I was sitting at a red light about a mile from my house. I was completely sober. No drinking, no drugs. No other cars at the intersection, just me. As I waited for the light to turn green, something fluttering caught my eye in my rearview mirror. At first, I thought it was a big bird, but as I continued to stare, I saw this was no bird. It was huge, flying about 6 to 8 feet above the road behind me, heading directly at me, probably a good city block behind. I saw its wings flapping. As it got closer, I could see each wing was about a 6-foot span. It had a human-type body. It was all black. I was frozen in fear. I may have even stopped breathing. My mind raced to try and justify what I was seeing. My eyes quickly darted around, looking for flags, banners, something that possibly created this image I was seeing on the road. There was nothing. It just about reached the bed of my truck when the light turned green. I broke my stare, and I floored it out of there. Funny how your mind races and your body freezes while trying to justify what you're seeing. That was the most awful fear I've ever experienced. When I got home, I was trembling. Reality set in. To this day, I still don't know what the hell it was that I saw. I searched the net to give you an idea of what I saw. I know what this sounds like, but I never saw it again, and I hope I never do. This story gave me goosebumps just reading it. It's also exciting because it's a more recent sighting. I've been seeing a lot of talk about Mothman sightings in the Illinois and Michigan areas. Maybe this is where it's living these days. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you have a paranormal story? Let us know, and we would love to feature it. Email us at webmaster@spookyappalachia.com. Jessieville, Arkansas. Possible Mothman sighting. For this week's story, given the popularity of Mothman, I decided to reach out to our friends at the Mothman Museum. This story is the first of about 22 sighting stories sent to us by the museum. The encounter happened in Arkansas, but I decided to go ahead and use it since Mothman is well known to be primarily an Appalachian cryptid, and because everyone loves him so much. Hello there. I'm sure you probably get thousands of emails about strange happenings and bizarre events, but I have something for you too. I haven't heard of Mothman until today as a result of what happened to me last night and early this morning. I was told to look on the internet to find something by friends at work who I solely trust with this that would not think I was crazy or losing my mind. To start off with, I live in a small town in Jesseville, Arkansas. It's just outside of Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. I go by Lone Wolf. This is what happened to me last night, early this morning. I live in a very small camper. Last night wasn't any different than any other night. There are 2 Belgian mules and 2 ponies with about 6 horses that freely roam this 64-acre property. I leave to go to work around 4 a.m., so I get to bed around 6 or 7 p.m. Sometimes in the night I hear the roaming of the animals here, along with them once in a while scratching themselves by rubbing their bodies on the camper. Nothing strange about that. About a week ago, I changed the sleeping position due to the headlight shining through the camper from my niece's car when she got home from work. Last night I was really more restless than usual. There was a lot more noises outside the camper than usual. There was something pounding on the camper in the middle of the night. I remember waking up due to a light that was very bright coming through the window. For a moment I thought it was my niece coming home, but then I realized the window without a curtain is facing the wooded part of the property. I was awake then. It wasn't an ordinary type of light. It was very intense and had an orange-red glow to it, almost like a setting sun. I looked out the window, but I couldn't see anything. I had the sense that someone or something was watching me. Believing that there's a logical explanation for everything, I just rolled over and went back to sleep, or should I say tried. I felt the camper move like something was pushing on it, but I thought it was just a mule or horse. Then there was a pounding on the camper again. I have an electric heater in the camper and remember awakening to be very cold and the sense that I wasn't alone. I opened my eyes and thought I saw a large black shadow looking at me for a few seconds. It was gone. I breathed very deeply for a few moments and saw my breath condensate in the air. It was extremely cold in the camper for a couple of minutes. I looked at the clock and saw it was time for me to go to work. I got up, changed, and checked the door to make sure it was still locked, which it was. I went out to my van and started it, turned on the lights, and noticed there were feed buckets on the ground. I picked them up and put them in the back of my brother's truck. I drove out, opened and closed the gate, and then proceeded to drive to work. I usually have about a 45-minute drive to work. I remember going through an S-curve and seeing a white plastic bag in a tree on the right side of the road. For some reason, it caught my attention. Just after I turned my head, all of a sudden I saw a swarm of 100 or so, like birds, bats, moths, I don't really know. It happened so fast, coming right down the middle of the road. I cranked the steering wheel hard to the left and tried to avoid as much contact as I could with whatever they were. I remember hearing thuds off my van and seeing things bounce off my windshield and the front of my van. It was like they had all these small, bright red eyes or something. They were like tracing flashes off my van. Strange and bizarre, yes indeed. It was about 4:15 a.m. in the dark. No birds are flying at that time. It's winter here and the bats are dormant. It's too cold for insects right now. I just know they looked like bats to be the closest thing that I can think of. I never stopped and kept on driving to work. When I got to work, I left the lights on and got out, checked for any damages. There was nothing there. A work friend came over and asked me if I hit a deer or something. I was still a little shaken up and kept faith in telling him what happened. I still had the sense that something was watching me and kept looking over my shoulder all day long. My friend from work told me about Mothman and said I should watch the movie and check out the net to see if anything compares to what happened to me. He also told me to let him know what goes on for the next couple of days. Boy, that was something really nice to hear, thinking I was done with this ordeal. All through my workday, I tried to make sense of any of this and couldn't. I finished out my day at work and drove back home. I even stopped where I saw that plastic bag in the tree and looked all over for something and couldn't find anything. I got home and told my brother. I still have this feeling that something is watching me. Also, the buckets that I put in the truck this morning were on the porch, and the gate to the yard for my brother's house was opened, and his stud colt was out loose, and, as we know, no one put the buckets on the porch. It was also said that sometime during the time that I left for work and the time that everyone else got up here, there was knocking at the front door of my brother's house. I know I picked those buckets up and put them in the bed of the truck and the yard gate was closed. I saw the colt watching me the whole time. The yard gate was closed. Can you make sense of any of this? Thank you for your time, help, and cooperation. Thank you again, Lone Wolf. Don't pick lemons. Another great possible Mothman sighting.
Hey, this is Jeff Walmsley coming to you live from the World's Only Mothman Museum here in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. want to give you a little quick tour for my buddies who do the live cam, Jimmy and his buddy. What's your name?
Zach.
Zach, sorry, Zach.
It's
Okay.
all right.
The museum, we opened in 2006, and we have grown to where we are open 7 days a week now. We have a massive collection of archives, newspaper clippings, police reports, eyewitness accounts, all kinds of stuff that has to do with Mothman. So we'll do a little quick tour real quick and kind of give you an idea what's going on. This is the gift shop. We have the world's largest collection of Mothman merchandise, t-shirts, dolls, stickers, you name it. We got all kinds of stuff. So all this stuff's available online, www.mothmanmuseum.com. And as you walk back into the museum, you will see a lot of the collection that we have. We have a lot of the eyewitness accounts, handwritten police reports from November 15, 1966. We have costumes that were custom made for the Mothman Museum. We have a lot of video monitors, playing documentaries, things like that. Over in this area here, we got a lot of the newspaper archives and collections, all kinds of different things to look at and see. We have a media room where you can sit down and watch documentaries and stuff. The infamous Men in Black, who were seen during the Mothman sightings in the 60s, intimidate a lot of the witnesses, newspaper reporters, and things like that. We also have a nice John Keel collection. John Keel wrote the Mothman Prophecies book. We have his suit and stuff back here as kind of a tribute to John Keel. Lots of interesting things. A lot of photo ops too. Come in and get your picture taken with the statue or the different photo ops. But hopefully, if you get a chance to come and visit us, we're open year round. Mothman Festival's in September 17th and 18th, and you can contact us online for any questions.
And it is back this year.
Yes, the festival will be back this year. We've had to cancel the last two because of COVID, but this year we're having it no matter what. So we've already decided. So we hope to see everybody in September or before.
UFO Chase, Troutville, Virginia, 1974. For today, we have a story sent in by a fan named Clifton from an encounter he had in Virginia back in 1974. I hope you enjoy it. It was a late summer night, about 11:30 p.m. in August of 1974. I was about 17 years old at the time. I was driving to my home in Nace, Virginia, which is located between Troutville and Buchanan. I was coming home from my girlfriend's house in Salem on Route 11, passing through Troutville. Coming into Troutville, I had noticed some relatively low lights and thought it might be a plane making its approach to Woodrum Field in Roanoke. All of a sudden, I realized that the lights did not seem to be moving, and I began to slow down until I came to a dead stop right in the middle of town in front of the old Troutville Elementary School. That's when I noticed a dark triangular craft about 150 feet right above me, and with a bright white light on each corner. My anxiety was rising fast, and I felt the hair on my arms and neck standing up. I rolled down my window on my 1963 Oldsmobile and leaned very far out and looked straight up. I was immediately impressed at the size of the craft, as it was at least as long and as wide as a football field. I also noticed there were no engine or motor sounds, but only a deep humming coming from the craft. It was so intense that I could actually feel the humming in my body. Now I was completely at a loss as to what I was seeing or what I should do. I had a gun in the car, and a quick thought passed through my mind that I should get it, but thankfully that thought went away as quickly as it had come. This was when the fear crept in, as I realized how actually close to this craft I was, and there had been no cars coming from either direction in the short time that all of this had transpired. Erratic thoughts started racing through my mind. Would it try to hurt me? Or even worse, would it try to take me? I quickly ducked back into my car, rolled up the window, and stepped on the gas. Actually, I floored it and exited Troutville, heading north on Route 11 towards my home in Nace. Now, my 63 Oldsmobile was what I called a tank due to its size and being made up almost completely out of steel. Route 11 is a 4-lane highway there, 2 lanes in each direction, and I had pegged the speedometer at 120 miles an hour, and I was cutting corners. I could see that the craft was still very low and right behind me, following as I sped along. I was very frightened. When I came to the turn off my right to go to Nace on a backcountry road, I noticed another car coming from the opposite direction. We passed one another just as I slowed way down to turn off Route 11, and the other car was proceeding towards Troutville. It was now that I noticed the craft had stopped following me and was following the other car back towards Troutville. While I was glad that it was no longer following me, my fear had not yet subsided. I continued to speed the rest of the way home. Upon entering the front door to my house, I saw that my mom and dad were still up, and they had immediately noticed the state I was in. I told them what had happened, and I was sure they were going to think I was nuts, but my dad said that he had seen several things in the sky out where we lived, and he was really not surprised at my story. 48 years have passed since that night, and I still remember it like it happened last night. I went on to spend 20 years in the Army and only shared the story with about 10 people in that amount of time. I never talked about it a lot because I did not want to get the looks and hear the comments that I feared would come my way. I have never made the judgment as to whether or not this craft was alien or something from this world. I personally believe it was something from another world. The government of our country has finally admitted that there are UFOs, but they really have not commented any further. I believe they know much more about these things, but for some reason they do not want to share it with the American people. Before this, I was really not a believer, but now I know they're out there. I wish we were informed of everything ours and other governments know, but that may not happen in my lifetime. I still watch the sky, and always will. All I can say is, wow. Thank you, Clifton, for sharing the story with me to use on the site. This has been one of my favorite stories I had